Everyone say hello to Lorraine Hochstetler. Did I get that right?
Yes. Good going, David.
I prepared it and was going to mess it up 5 seconds later. Um, anyway, so let me ask you a quick question to kind of dive in. How did you become aware of me? Because I'm always interested in that question.
Well, thankfully, I always look at everything happens for a reason. And I just thought of this today when I was driving home. I would have never met you if it wouldn't have been for benzodiazepine.
Mm,
So good comes out of the yucky stuff.
yes, yes.
So that's literally how I found you when I had no clue. And I'll get into that in my story. But I literally, started Googling, started going to YouTube, help, 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 And so here's Coach David Powers. So in my gut, I knew that I'm going to chase you down. And you were
Yeah.
so you were pretty busy at the time when I was desperate, and you kind of just, you didn't turn, shove me off, but you didn't always answer my questions. So I was like, well, when the time is right. So, but I emailed you and you probably forgot because at that time, but you did respond. You did ask
Right.
me, and you were always very nice.
Hmm.
And you made one statement in one of your videos that I clung to throughout this entire journey. And it says, something awesome is going to come out of this.
Yeah.
And I literally had that on my phone. I had it everywhere. And in my darkest moments, I would say, but David told me something
Yeah.
good's going to come out of this.
Hmm.
So thank
Yeah.
you.
That hope. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And I want to say too, I for the first few years or so that I did this, I got back to every comment, every email, and now, especially in the last year or so, things that just kept getting busier and busier. And people find me on Twitter, they find me on Facebook, they find me on Instagram, they email me the comments, and before I knew it, it was like 50 texts, emails, messages, and then top of them, all my clients. So they come first to me, because they're my clients. So I want them, if they get to me, I got to get back to them as fast as possible. But things just kept building, and only until recently I had to finally start saying, I'm sorry, I can't get back to everybody. And I felt bad because I would spend an hour in the morning and then an hour after work just writing people, and I was like, I'm sinking in this. At some point, it's just getting much. So just know that I do feel bad if I leave any of you guys hanging and it goes, or if I miss something. I try not to miss anything, but it's just, what are you going to do? It's starting to get to a point, you know what I mean, where it's like it's just too many people to keep up with.
Yeah, and it's actually a polished coach. I honestly, I wasn't expecting you to always respond to my questions because you were very clear with, you can set up a session, and I knew that. But at
Yeah.
the time, I was like, who can I trust? Because I literally had kind of a bump of experience when I did reach out to one gal, and she kind of left me hang a little bit, and I had
Yeah.
paid for the consultation. So then I'm like, okay, I'm gonna be a little bit careful here,
I've heard
because
something like that before. Okay.
keep in mind, we were already pretty much messed up with our doctor. We're pretty, bummed about that situation.
Right.
So now we're going to, walk on water here with, can I trust this coach, that type of
Right.
thing. So, but it's all good,
Yeah.
and I, you know, you were
And
always gentle.
oh, good, good. And also with the coaching thing, people never have, well, they think it's a simple question. They go, just thank you for answering my question. It's a quick question. How do I stop rumination? And I go, oh, that's the topic of books. you know, I've put out probably 4 hours of content on that, and still didn't
Right.
cover everything. So it's like, that's not a short answer. Okay. Okay, just Coach Powers, real quick. How do I overcome anxiety? It's like, there's no short answer. So yeah, so that, I think sometimes people think there's a short answer. But look, I do a video and I'll set out for 2 minutes just to tell you to put lemon in your water, and 12 minutes later I'm still talking. So maybe it's just me too. I'm not good at quick answers. You're going to get a long-winded answer, a well
Right.
thought out answer
Well,
anyway.
right. Well, and you have to be careful how you answer them, like rumination or anxiety, because we don't know where they're stemming from. Because let's say, I started out going to the doctor for anxiety. and he slaps me with the benzodiazepine. Had he just asked me a couple questions, we could have avoided all of that. So
Yeah.
a long answer is not wrong.
Right. I agree. Yeah. I've gone through a couple medical specialists more recently due to an injury, and two of them I think was like a whirlwind out of three that I've seen anyway, three or four. They just came in and they were out within 2 minutes, and I had more questions by the time they left than I did going into the damn thing, And I always just always it's always been my experience, and I always thought I'm never going to do that to people. It's so incredibly rude to not be aware of what the other person, so even if it's something small, I want to give as much as I can and not leave someone hanging. So I'm not good at that. But yeah, today, these days, things are getting busier, and sometimes it's just easier to say, hey, schedule a session. Well, what about a half hour? I'm like, a half hour, I can't even get into your story. And
Mhm.
all of us have the rehearsed story thing, but I go back deep. I want to know, whatever you're comfortable sharing. If you had anxiety as a child, all that stuff informs me of and gives me clues of the big picture. You know what I mean? So I want to go through that. You can't do that in a half hour. So it's kind of reckless, I think, to give someone uh deep advice on anything, most things benzo, without having some big background on them, something, because I don't know, everybody's story is different, everybody's variables are different, and God forbid you tell someone, goes, do you think I should come off my antidepressant? I don't even want to touch that, you know what I mean? I without knowing your backstory, I can't even begin to even give you any kind of advice. I would just rather avoid it. But
Yeah.
so
Absolutely. And the key thing is, so I have 5 kids,
mhm.
and that's been a really good lesson for me. So my one daughter in particular, when she would want to talk, she would come back. She says, "Mom, stay present. Are
Yeah,
stay in the room." And I
that's
think
good.
that's key for coaches is, you
Yes.
know, because we multitask in our busyness,
Hmm.
and that's unhealthy.
Right. Oh yeah. I'm the king multitasker. So
Yeah.
we got so much to get into. Um, I guess let's start with your story. You sent me that video, and I actually hesitated. I watched a couple, just a few moments of it, and I stopped and I said, "No, I want to hear this from you. I don't want to, you know what I mean? I wanted it to be fresh and natural." But the video looked great. I mean, I gave you a compliment, I believe. Um, the lighting, everything. I was like, "Wow, look at this. Looks pretty good.
Yeah.
Sounded good.
Yeah.
Yeah, good quality."
Thanks to our kids, right?
Yeah, there you
And
go.
it was my son actually that came up with the idea. He said, because my kids were always saying, you need to tell your story. And what we're
Mhm.
working on now is we're going to have them tell their story.
Right. Oh,
What
that's
did they
great.
go? Yeah, what did they go through while
That's
mom was
brilliant.
going through what they did?
That's
And
brilliant.
and they even got their dad, which is my husband, tell your side of the story. So even after we did that recording, we just sat around in the room as a family,
Mhm.
and everybody obviously was crying. And I think it's the music my son put to it. So in that emotional place, we all just really spilled our
Wow.
guts, and just, what everybody went through. Like I had a daughter-in-law sitting in the room. She said, I experienced this with my mom, and now I experienced it with my mother-in-law.
Wow.
And she said what happened was different. Like her mom stayed in the puddle of her stuff, and she said, you're putting your boots on and you're getting back up again.
Right.
So, it's in that refreshes and encourages her. So then we came up with this idea. How about you guys tell your story? So then, and it helped me because I was a little bit looking at what am I going to do with this? Because I want something awesome to come out of this. So the kids said, we wish you would tell us how not to get onto these things, because nobody's telling us how to avoid these things. You all are working on how to help you through it. But what about if we could avoid this? So that really lit a light bulb in me. So that's getting ahead of my story.
Yeah. No, but I love that. That's brilliant. And I hope you don't mind, but I would love to have people, family members on I think that's just a brilliant idea to have the
Right?
family talk, not just the people going through benzo, but I would love to have somebody on, the wife, the husband, the child, the mother, whatever, just to hear, because you're so right, like that those people are warriors themselves, and they usually are kind of unsung. Nobody really, we're not talking or thinking about them, but it takes incredible patience, love, and just a good heart to stick through stick by someone through this, because we are not at our best, and we're difficult, and we're grumpy, and we're needy, and we're freaking out, and and it's got to be taxing. I can't even imagine.
Right. And we're so broken. And the thing is none of us had a plan, a roadmap, a blueprint on how to do this. So here we are in the midst of all of this, because all of us that are getting on this pretty much were ignorant of what was going to happen. So it wasn't like we were inviting and, oh, thank you for letting me go through this hell for the next year or two or however long. So, and that's what happened to the kids. They were just as lost as I was. So they were scrambling on how can we support mom? And I had one daughter in particular, she said, Mom, stop Googling. I'll take care of you. And that was huge, because it got dark when you Google the stuff, it's like, am I ever going to be normal again? And, so that's, I think too, it's key because they were saying, let's even have some guidelines on how we can help family members go through these things, things you should say, things you shouldn't say, things you should do and not do. Because there were times they pushed me. I got mad at them. And I thanked them later, because, yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes all you can do is give them the big warning, the big disclaimer, and then get good at apologizing.
Yes.
Because you're going to be grumpy, you're going to be difficult, you're going to be needy, you're going to, everybody's going to fall into those pits. I actually am not that the best at asking people for that kind of help. And so when I was going through it, I'm used to being the strong one in my family and in life in general. So it's tough when you're a coach or a healer. Like everyone comes to you to complain, but you don't get to go to anyone. There's no one at the end of the day for you usually. I'm not trying to make a boohoo about me, but I kept it when I was going through it. I just tried to keep it to me because it became obvious maybe in the first 6-7 months, a year, that my suffering was a burden to everyone around me. And the more I complained, the more I ruminated, the more I just wanted to talk, and it consumed me. Everything has to be about benzos. Every single thing, no matter what you eat, you drink, what you do, it all comes back to benzos. And you could start to see, you read the room and you can see the look in their eyes start to glaze over, like, this again, Dave? Oh, I just want to go for a walk with you. And so I realized if I don't dial it back, they're going to start disappearing. And what I want is not a ruminating buddy necessarily, because they'll leave anyway. But I just want someone to be around me every now and then when you need it, because it's huge. And I have clients that are going through this completely isolated and alone. And it just breaks my heart for them, And all of them, I think, get a dog, get a little dog, not so much a cat, because they're kind of, they're like, they do their own thing, but get you just a little lap dog, just something that's very easy to take care of, that will just nurture you and need you. I just think that's a great relationship if you're going through this.
Yes, because I'm with you on that. I'm a very private person, and I hid a lot of my deepest pain. I would but thankfully my husband was, he was super strong with it the whole time. He stayed through thick and thin, but he was just like you said, there was times they would roll their eyes. It's like, can we talk about something else? Because
Right.
it's so consuming. It's like you just radiate all of that, and it is hard. It is hard to shift, but it always does good. Now, for me, I'm a nature person, and I think everybody is. I love nature. I love going out there, connecting to trees, grass, rooting myself, and that would be shifts that I would have, when you are alone. And if you don't have that four-legged creature, I would go to the
Yeah.
outside.
Yeah, I agree. Where are you from right now? Where you located?
I'm in Columbus, Ohio.
Ohio. Lots of
Yes.
nature. I don't think I've been to Ohio. I've been to a lot of
Yeah.
places.
We
What's it
live out
like
in the
out there?
country.
Yeah.
We live out in the country. So I've got 5 acres of nothing but grass.
Oh,
So
great. I love that. I love
yeah.
that. That's what I want. Just a compound with a fence, a 12-foot tall brick fence. I'm ready to go off the grid. I'm tired of it. Um,
Uh,
you know,
yeah,
quick
sure.
thing, I'm just, the artist in me is looking around in the background, and it looks so good back there. It looks like a model home that you have there with the colors and everything.
Yeah, I'm actually in my basement. We have a little kitchenette behind me
Oh,
here.
wow.
Yeah. And so this is where we camp out. When we come back home from work, we
Hmm.
own our own business. We will literally come down here and enjoy our little kitchen
Ah,
and lounge on the couch. And
mhm.
I should do the outside, but I'm on my laptop. So anyway.
Yeah, it looks nice in there. So before we
Yeah.
get into your story, could you just tell me or tell us a little bit, just kind of about you or your life and what you've kind of, just a few things, at any rate.
Yeah, well, 65 years, so there's a lot to say about life. But I was fortunate enough to be born and raised Amish. So that was horse and buggy, no electric, all of that fun stuff. So here I am, now away from all of that stuff. But I
Wow.
love my heritage. I love that I have had that experience under my belt. And as a little girl, I would tell my dad, when I grow up, I'm not going to stay Amish because I wanted to be fast. I wanted to have a car. I wanted to, be like normal people. So anyway,
Right.
so and my husband had the adventure of being a missionary kid to Honduras for a couple of years. So we've got that experience to share with our kids. We do have 5 kids. They're all grown, married, a bunch of great grandchildren, not great yet. And the oldest one's 13. So that's going to happen, in the sweet by and by. But, life for the most part has been very, very good. You mentioned a little bit ago that there's times that things happen in our childhood that may also express themselves when you go through this benzo. So today I was, processing a little bit, what do I want to say? And I'm aware that because I have there's 10 siblings in my family. I've lost 4 of my family members to health issues. And I was always the strong person for my mom. And so I never really grieved. So that's something I literally had to go through this benzo healing, is allow myself to grieve, because I always would have to be the one with the broad shoulders and I could just fix the whole world. And I would tell people when they had health issues, you know what? Just get over it. I just was not compassionate.
Mm,
So I literally internally decided, when I get through this, I'm going to be the most compassionate person in
mm,
this world. So I feel like I'm doing a way better job at it, because now I have full ears intuitive to that. And I'm happy about that.
mm,
So what had actually happened is we were always very actively involved with church. We were just those leaders that showed up and did everything. And I had an unpleasant experience with my leadership, and I still think I did the right thing, but that's neither here nor there. But in that situation, I did not take care of my health like I should have. And I was overweight at the time, and I developed high blood pressure, where my nose would not stop bleeding. And I went to my primary doctor. He put me on blood pressure medicine. That led me to where I got insomnia and anxiety. So I go back to them. Then they put me on a benzo, as I could never say that word. I just say benzo. But anyway, put me on that along with anxiety med and a sleeping pill. So now I'm on 3 medications. I hate medications. I've always hated them. But for the first time I could sleep. So I'm like, hunky dory, this is good. Maybe this is my answer. But it didn't take me about 3 weeks. I was like, this is not working. I started having nightmares that were out of this world. I became snap-assy.
mm,
I became a different person. So I went back to my primary doctor and I said, this is not working. And so well, you got to give it time, and I was like, can I get off the benzo? No, we have to wait till the antidepressant kicks in, which is, I forget how many weeks till that thing kicks in. But anyway, interesting enough, every time I asked them if I could come off of the benzo, they always would just tell me, we'll work with that down the road.
mm.
Like it wasn't a priority.
Right.
So I'm persuaded, David, to this day, I don't care. Doctors still don't know how deadly those things are. And I asked the doctor one time, would you prescribe this to your mom? And he said, probably not. And I said, well, I'm a mom, so I want off.
That's
We'll
interesting.
we'll get off. We'll get you off. Well, because they didn't pay attention to me, I actually changed my primary doctor, got another one. Same story, same thing. So then I was like, okay, we're not getting anywhere. And I had at that point changed my lifestyle. I lost weight. I did exercising. I meditated. I did all of those things that I never had time to do before.
Mhm.
And so things were shaping up to where I thought we could just drop this thing. I did get off of the Ambien, which is a sleeping pill. That was a piece of cake to stop. I did get off of the antidepressant. That wasn't bad at all to get off. But that little benzo thing, am I allowed to say what it's called on this video?
What it's called?
Yeah,
Oh,
like
like the actual name brand or whatever? Oh, yeah.
right. Okay. So it was Ativan. And I was taking the minimal amount. In fact, when they would tell me that I could take like the whole pill, I would literally break it in half and sometimes in quarter, because I was determined not to get, somehow I knew I was going to maybe get addicted to it, even though everybody kept saying, you're taking the minimum amount, you're going to be fine, you can just quit taking it. So actually, in all that year, I was pretty much miserable because I was always anxious. I was always nervous. I didn't sleep well. I just wasn't myself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was a hard year. Like, we are very family oriented, do vacations together, celebrate birthdays, all of that stuff. And there was times I was just like, I didn't feel like going. My energy started depleting. And like I said, I just became a different person.
Mm-hmm.
So because I felt my primary doctor wasn't listening to me, I went to a functional doctor because I thought they know everything. So they were like, well, let's get your liver cleansed. Let's get this and that done, and I was like, but what about the benzo? And they were like, that'll take care of itself. And so I'm like, do I have to do this myself? That thought would cross my mind, but I was like, okay, I'll trust them. So that did not turn out the best, David, like I was hoping it would, because they put me on some herbs and they said that should work. And I took those herbs faithfully. They tasted awful. Mm. And I felt like they almost made me more anxious. And I'm just being real gut honest. Mm-hmm. So then they said, you can probably just stop taking the Ativan. So I did. And that was harsh. I was a mess. So I went back on it again, and they were like, well, we're pretty much unable to help you. So those are the words that a lot of people get to hear, where doctors or somebody says, sorry, can't help you anymore. And I remember that night crying my heart out. And I didn't sleep that night. I was just like, there's nobody left for me. I'm on my own. And you know what? I had to go inside my own being. And I remember thinking, there's a creator, some call it universe, some call it God, whatever you want to call it. But for me, it was the divine within me. Somehow we're going to figure this out. And they had suggested I go to a psychiatrist, which I did, went online. She immediately stopped the Ativan and put me on, I think it's called antihistamine, something like that. Anyway, I was like, really? I just stopped this Ativan? I've been on it for a year. And now it becomes my buddy, even though I hated it. It was still my four-legged creature. And she said, yep, you just stop and you take this SSRI and you'll be good to go. And at that point, we always had trips going, and my husband and I went to Georgia to celebrate our anniversary. And poor Dan, that's my husband's name, he had no clue what hell we were in for that weekend. I sweated bucket loads. I never slept. I couldn't eat. My head was going to pop off, and just all that weird stuff was going on. So, part of him was mad, and in a good way. Can I say it that way? Because he was just like, what hell are we going through here? And at that point is when we had reached out to our kids and said, somehow we got to figure out something different. And I would watch YouTubes. And I think that was the first I had actually landed your YouTube channel. And I watched every single one of your YouTubes. I mean, I was glued to them. I was awake all night anyway, so I had time. So,
right.
So I appreciate you. And, and that's why I think it's key, is that there's voices out there, because, what if you would have been selfish and said, you know what, I hope you guys figured out just like I did. Right. But you're like, you know what, if I can help someone, I will do that. Right. And so that was always, I was like, I knew I would survive somehow, but I didn't think it would take me as long as it did. And so we came back home. I called the psychiatrist, and I said, I'm done. This does not work. So I tapered off as fast as I could on my own. And I hunted and searched. I did a lot of my own homework. I invited herbs. I would test them to see if they would work for me. And I sometimes took too many herbs. And so I had to kind of dial down on that. And at that time, one of my daughters was having a baby. I wasn't able to be there for her like I wanted to be. And see, that's a tender story that my daughter wants to share, because she had to figure out, how am I going to go through all of this? My mom is broken. I'm doing this as my first baby birth, and she couldn't even reach out to her mom for that advice that she needed at that point. And that's freaking wrong. But she survived it. She became a very strong person as well through that. And I knew in my gut, I was determined that I will still be that normal mom. I will get all of my health back, and I will be better than I was before, or whatever that takes. Right. So, yeah, I did that. And then I had another daughter coming up that was going to get married. And I knew at the time, because what happens is everything that you experience through withdrawal is magnified. People would say, oh yeah, I have anxiety, just like the average person, but it's not a normal anxiety. It's like hijacked anxiety. It's ridiculous, and the fear, it's like a monstrous fear, and everybody would tell me there's nothing to be afraid of. And I'm like, I know, but it was just there. But I would show up, David. I would go to places, anxiety, sweating, nervous. I come home, I was so wiped. I would literally just crash, because that took a lot of ambition to do that, and you don't have that Band-Aid of an Ativan anymore to reach out to. And you can have an herb, you can have water, you can meditate, you can breathe, but
yeah. They don't prescribe water and meditation for anxiety. It doesn't quite do the same thing.
It doesn't. Kind of makes you mad sometimes. But then, but anyway, journaling, I did the journaling, I've learned meditations, I've learned breathing, I've learned things that I would have never learned if I wouldn't have gone through this. And what I will say is I loved how the synchronicities of everything would show up in my life at the right time. I'm not sure how I was that fortunate, but I would always just like, wow, this person or my kids said the right thing at the right time. And I was like, I always was grateful how everything seemed to, just like the universe was shining down on me at every single step that I would go through. And I love that part about it, even though it was hard, but I never felt like I was alone. Did I lose friends? Of course, because there were girls that did not comprehend this. And you know what? We have to be okay with that. Because if they're not meant to be in your life, then we have to let them go. It's hard, and yet it isn't, because there's just not that energy. A true friend will go through with you no matter what. I had 2 girlfriends that took me on a wine date for a weekend. I didn't drink any wine because I was going through withdrawal, but I just went for the fun of it. I didn't sleep that night because that's what happens when you're still in that anxiety place, but I just quieted myself. I was just grateful that somebody cared for me at that level and were willing to do up with all of my baggage at that point. And, we laughed and giggled through the entire thing. And, and they said, we don't understand this, but we're walking through with you. So, you're grateful for people like that.
Yeah. It's funny. Well, not funny. It's kind of sad. I don't know how many people abandon you, how many people expose themselves, and I always talk about I would go up to this local bar, obviously like you didn't drink, but I needed the social, it was like a bar restaurant, and I would sit up there and drink water, and they'd call me Aquaman, and they'd make fun of me. Another round of water. But I was like, yeah, keep the lemon coming, but I would sit there and just be in the corner like, but I was like, I needed this. And I remember running to a few of my old friends. They were my old friends. They were my friends. And they say, hey, come on, let's have a beer. That's like, I'm not drinking. And people that weren't around, And then I remember one of them said something like, well, you're not much fun anymore. And it just broke my heart for some reason. I don't know why. It seems like such not a thing that would bother someone. But I just thought, like, I'm not fun anymore. and you just want to just pour it out and say, let me tell you why I'm not fun right now, why I'm not the life of the damn party. You know what I mean? You're lucky I'm out of my house right now. Like, if you understood what a big mission this was for me and how much I'm going to pay for it later, because you pay
Hmm.
for it all later. Like you said, you come home, you're spent, or maybe the next 2 days I might be ramped up from this. Um, but yeah, that kind of hurt me. But then I just said, oh. And then I guess you know, the sad part is we serve a certain function for a lot of people in our lives, most people probably.
Hmm.
And when you stop being able to serve that function, once you get, you're going through something like this. Let's say if you got sober or change something about what you were, and watch these people sort of expose themselves. So you're the person that I hung out with when I needed something. You know what I mean? And suddenly you can't
Hmm.
provide that, and they're gone. But it's like,
Hmm.
okay. So like you, it was sort of like, okay, I'm glad I know. So
Hmm.
you can leave, and I want the people that stuck around. Those are my tribe. You
Yeah.
know, those are the real people right there. And
Yeah.
a lot of people, you said like your best friend, or did you say best friend, or you said your close friends or something to that nature? I hear that all the time amongst, especially my female clients. I think guys maybe are try to be more tough or something. I don't hear it as often from the guys, but my female clients say a lot like, "Oh, my sister abandoned me. My best friend of 30 years won't talk to me," and you just go, "Wow, what the hell is going on here?" You
Hmm.
know, it's just devastating to have to be shunned and shamed on top of it. And sometimes it has something to do with, I think their friends are on Xanax or something, and then so they don't want to hear it. It's like, they cover their ears and they go, just go away. I'm on Xanax. Don't talk to me about that. It's like, okay, what what is that? It's like if I got cancer from smoking cigarettes, you can't go, my grandma smoked for 45 years. She's fine. What
Hmm.
good for her? I'm
Right.
suffering, you know. It's just strange, like the stuff personally I've seen and went through with the people in my life, you know.
Hmm.
Probably why I now these days I just want a house in the woods. Less people, the better.
Uh,
I got my small loyal tribe, and that's good, you know.
exactly. And they're strong and they're for real. So I agree with you.
Yeah,
It's not about the 1,000 people. It's about the two, you know.
right.
And I will say you made a note of it. Don't you feel like during this time we're so sensitive? Like you said, when they said that about you, like you just schedule your water, whatever.
Yeah,
I feel like I get triggered with just the smallest little comments, like people will text me something and I'll be so personally offended. And before I would tell my husband, I could just take any kind of, harsh whatever. I was like,
right.
whatever. Now I crumble, it's like,
Hmm.
she didn't, like, and he just rolls his eyes. He's like, and
Yeah,
I like to blame everything on benzos.
right.
So my kids will call me out on that. It says, Mom, it's not a benzo excuse, and I was like, but it's my crutch.
Yeah.
So,
Benzos have a way of taking over our world if you're not careful.
yeah.
It can definitely become that thing. And then we can in a good way, in a bad way, forge a new identity through it. Inevitably it happens. I think it happens
Yeah.
with anybody that survives something profound, like a soldier or something, you know. But then you got to be careful you don't become Dave the benzo survivor, benzo warrior, benzo, and not entirely. There's good places for that, but you know what I mean. It shouldn't
Hmm.
encompass all of your personality. You're bigger than benzos. Don't
Hmm.
forget that. You know that you were
Yeah.
bigger than benzos. You're a real person before benzos. But I think
Hmm.
also this is where I think rumination and stuff gets in the way because of these forums. So many of us lose so many people in our life that these forums become our only refuge, and these people
Hmm.
become our only friends. You know, and it's our only community. We have no community, so we'd rather sit at the quote unquote benzo bars and drink our rumination shots with each other. You know, basically just kicking our hyperarousal into overdrive with each other. But that's the price we'll pay. It's like, okay, I'm going to suffer more, but I'll have support and community. It's not perfect, and that's why I started my Life After Benzo's group, trying to keep it positive, because I thought that's all we want. We just want to be together. We just want to be
Mhm.
heard and seen and have people understand what we're going through. We don't need to ruminate together, but rumination, it's an addiction. It's like, inevitably you get enough alcoholics in a room, somebody's going to break out a bottle, and everybody's drunk an hour later.
Mhm.
It tends to be what happens. So that's tough. How did you do with the rumination? Is that something you struggled with?
It was, and what I would always think about is how would I like to be? How would I like if another person would constantly be negative and constantly be complaining about it? Because we've all had those friends. I had a girlfriend for 6 years. It was the same story every time we came together. And I just wanted her to get over it. And it's like, surely, surely. So, and it's not just benzos. There's all kinds of health, you know,
Right.
things that happen that people struggle
Right.
with. And it can be cancer, it can be rheumatoid arthritis, it can be whatever. So I would always think of that when I would, have my moments. And I did allow myself to have my pity parties. It's okay. I would revel in them, and then I would shift, and sometimes it longer than others. One of my biggest things that I hated is when I didn't sleep at night. I don't know why, but that would just tick me off when I would not sleep. And I
Yeah.
was just awful the next morning,
Hmm.
and thankfully, my husband would always be, gentle with me about it. Or there's times he would say, you know what, you got to snap out of it,
Yeah.
you're going to live. And so those were the things I needed to hear. And I think still today, I'm 6 months free from them. So obviously I'm still healing, and I will acknowledge that. But I feel like I'm getting better and better and better at it, with quicker to snap out of it and
Yeah.
run. So I will start my morning with just a huge meditation on seeing what I want the day to look like. Now, what happens through this healing process is you can't always control that. It
Right.
may be something might come up, there could even be an odor of something that can trigger that, whatever it
Yeah.
is. And, if I do fall apart, is I will look at that. And I just shared a post a little bit ago on Life After Benzo's on looking at those scars and always reminding myself how far I've come.
Yes.
How quickly did you snap out of it this time, Lorene?
Yes.
Instead of looking at it, oh golly, here we go again, And for example, I'm kind of playing with the mushrooms right now, and they kind of kept me awake last night. So
Right.
I'm like, forget them,
Right. Right.
and so it's lesson learned, and I'm moving on. I may introduce it back in my life, I may not, but it was upsetting because I was like, wait a
Yeah.
minute, they gave you, like, I read a lot about it yesterday, and it sounds like they're pretty much same as heaven. And I'm sure they are for some people, but here again, David, what works for some people does not always work for the other person. And
Yeah.
so we have to be intuitive to our bodies. Go within. Does this resonate with me? And just
Right.
because David is doing it does not mean that Lorraine needs to do that. And
Right.
that's
Right.
why, you're the one that told me, because I kind of got excited 3 months after this. I felt really good. I felt like a brand new person. I was like, I'm ready to go. I'm going to start coaching. And I realized I needed to chill.
Yeah.
And
Right.
I'm not going to rush into coaching right now. I do
Right.
invite, if people want to, consult a little bit, I'm happy to do that, but I'm not going to set that up for you yet, because I want to heal this body myself
Yeah.
where I'm at.
Very, very
And
smart.
yeah, when the time is right, I will know that. And I think the biggest thing I've learned through all of this is stop. If there's no reason, pause may be a better word than stop. I pause and I refocus on
Right.
what is this? What does Lorene need to get through this? And it's not always about hurrying up and setting up a coaching call. Sometimes it is connecting to nature, connecting to your animal. What is it that I can connect to that brings me into my soul oneness with who I am, and then express throughout from that point? I don't
Right.
know if I answered your question.
No, it's great. You're giving a lot. And what I love about this interview here too is you're giving a lot of hope, I know, to someone listening right now, because you're now, what, 6 months out, and you're you're healing wonderfully. But not only that, you're this is what I tell people: you get what you put in. For a lot of us, and essentially what I'm hearing you say is, I learned how to change my mind, and I learned how to get out of my way, and I learned how to focus on things that were helping me, and then be brave and strong enough, and to keep doing that. Because everybody, we're going to wake up with rumination and fear and high cortisol and all, and the limbic system is going to be talking and yelling and screaming in our face the second we open our eyes on many days. So you, part of the training is actually learning, what are you going to do when you wake up and there's a storm? Are you just going to lay there paralyzed? Will you give in? Will you, when you wake up in the limbic system shouting, will you start shouting back and then spend the next several hours in bed shouting back and forth? What a lot of what we're trying to do in recovery, which is very similar to like CBT and a lot of psychotherapy, is we're trying to put a gap between the trigger and the response or the reaction. So but that doesn't happen instinctively. Like, you literally have to work on that, which is the aim of most psychotherapy and meditation, is trying to expand that gap a bit, right? Because by nature, we're reactive. We wake up and anxiety goes, ah, we go, ah, and it goes, ah, we go, ah, and that's it. We go back and forth.
Right.
What ah looks like may look like forums or WebMD or videos or crying to our spouses, or it's going to look like a lot of different things. But that's what I'm hearing you say. And to me, as a coach, and even like the psychologist in me, is like, that's the part I want people to hear. Is like, you hear this person telling you that she's doing better, but it wasn't just a random coincidence as well. She's telling you that she worked on changing her mind and changing her behaviors to get different outcomes. Is that fair to say?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's weird how you will maybe not have a symptom for a long, long time, and then it expresses itself. You will by default go down your laundry list of, what did I eat? What did I do wrong? And instead of, why don't we ask the positive questions? What did I do right?
Right.
What did I eat right? We always go for the negative, and we always go to our past. And it's not at looking at our past, and then you might have a symptom show up, like you will have a chest pain, or your heart rate, speeds up, and you're like, oh, I'm having a heart attack, or, oh, I probably have cancer. It's just weird, and so you really have to grab a hold of that thing, and as fast as you can. It was just like, you're going to be okay.
Right.
I told my husband the other day, I think he's told me 1 billion times, you're going to be okay. But I said, I love it every time he tells me, because I needed to hear it. To hear it, and so, like, I would call him every single time, because I always invite myself to push, like, go the next mile, Lorene, because there's, if you ask people, should I fly right now? And based on what they tell you, you will make that decision. But is that the true David? Right. Or is that, so you have to go within, and not that you can't bounce it off of someone, but make that decision within yourself. And
true.
So I did a flight, and I don't know, I think I reached out to you on that. Should I fly? And you didn't answer. And then I was so proud of myself when I did it. It was hard, because at the airport, I'm literally just, my whole body's just vibrating, and I looked at my husband, and he looks back at me, and he said, we're going, and so I took a deep breath, and I was like, you know what? If I die, I die. At least I die trying.
Right.
Because we don't die as easy as we think we do.
Right. That's true.
So do things that make yourself proud. That's what I always love that. I look back, check, you got it, girl. You can do this again.
Right.
And, I'm healthier now than I've ever been, David, in my entire life.
Wow.
So
that's great. And like, you mean like spiritually, mentally, emotionally,
all of it,
physically. Yes. Are you still taking the blood pressure meds, or were you able to kick those too?
I'm off all meds.
Wow, that's amazing.
Yeah.
And so what do you attribute that to now? What's the dynamic changes that led you here?
I would say number one is the spirituality, is learning, because there's a lot of shame and a lot of guilt for me that might not be for everybody. That was for me. I was ashamed that I fell prey to all these medications. I felt ashamed that I, didn't know more at the time. I was like, why didn't you do your homework, Lorene? You would have, saved yourself a lot. But you have to let all of that go and love through that. I learned to love myself. I would have told you, oh, I love myself, but I didn't. I know I didn't. So
Yeah.
the meditation of just going within, loving myself. And because, a lot of our healing is simply bathed in love.
Yeah.
And if we can bask in that realm of love, that liquid love, that vibrating love that nobody can take away from you, is healing. And I would do that day in and day out. I'm not there yet. I know I'm not, but I'm
Yeah.
better today than I was yesterday.
That's amazing. And in my recovery program, I have something called the 4 anchors of love, where we use, quite as it sounds, we use love as an anchor. And when I say it's something you have to, I said, look, it's like a fork in the road. Love annihilates fear. It annihilates
Yeah,
fear, extinguishes fear. On the other hand, fear can annihilate love too. It's a
absolutely.
tug of war that's happening, and so don't forget that the power of love is transformative. And if you want to look at its chemistry, we're talking about good doses of dopamine, oxytocin, serotonin. It's good stuff. Some natural
Mhm.
GABA, suppression of cortisol, suppression of norepinephrine. It But on a spiritual sense, on a human sense, it's the ultimate grounder. It grounds you, not just in, and I'm a deeply spiritual person, so it's not like it grounds you just from the anxiety, which is on the surface level. It grounds you somewhere deeper. It goes to the
Mhm.
core of your essence of what you are, who not, and everything's a reflection of what you are in a sense, and you're operating on love. You're here. I think it's the reason we're here,
Mhm.
right? It's the
Yeah.
reason we're here, I think. Um,
Yeah.
but if you can, so I would get in the hot tub, and first I had to feel safe, because I always tell people, you don't have, if you look at the hierarchy of needs, pursuing and becoming an individual, pursuing self-actualization, all that, it's not even on the table while you're going through this. You're at the bottom of Maslow's hierarchy of needs: food, shelter, water, safety, you know. And so feeling free and love, and seeing the deeper meaning, it's kind of terrible, because it's what you need to help guide you through this, but your limbic system's almost suppressing it, quite literally, and making it harder for you to find that. So you have to actually go dig for it. You have to find it. You have to make time for yourself to sort of poke a hole in that black cloth, that film that's there, and let one little trickle of light in. And then you start to work with that. You keep needling it and letting it get bigger and bigger. And so I would do it in the hot tub, because I could feel safe, and I could do my meditation, and I would do what I call the five senses limbic retraining, where I was using senses to sort of show my limbic system I was safe. And then once I got into a good space, then it was all about love. Then it was all about
Mhm.
trying to anchor myself and feel love. And self love is, like, I think, like you mentioned, is something I've struggled with as well. You know,
Mm.
I have to say, nobody's harder on me than me.
Right.
Beat me up better than anybody. But I would focus on that self-compassion, acceptance, love, and the strangest thing happens on a spiritual sense. And I don't mean you have to believe in God or any, but just open yourself to love. Love is enough, whatever it is. You know,
Mhm.
it starts to tell you things are going to be okay. It starts to sort of, the message is somewhere in there, right? Did you get that too?
Mm. Yes. Yeah. You're expressing it beautiful. You should write a book. You don't have nothing else to do, so
Yeah.
but you did awesome in expressing it, because that's so true. And I would probably add to that is allowing and receiving love from others as well, because
Right.
I think we kind of take, because my kids called me out on that. It says receive our love as well, because
Yes.
I was always the giver, and so and I had to welcome that as well, and that's healing too.
Yeah.
Is when I was weak and when I was broken, I would literally reach out to them, and I would receive their love, even though they weren't in my room, like not in the hot tub, but I
Mm.
would I would imagine that love, filling me from the top of my head to the sole of my feet. And when I
Yeah.
lay down in bed, I would welcome that love.
Right.
So, and that's healing as well.
Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's another thing I struggle with, especially during that. I mean, I'd be thinking other points of my life. I've come a long way, but I think, I came up from a lot of trauma and things of that nature. And I think even before Benzos, I was guarded, you know, and yeah, I could love people, but feeling love was sort of made you vulnerable. And when you
Hmm.
felt vulnerable, your limbic system said, "Oh, I don't like this." put your guards up,
Mhm.
because when you're
Yeah.
vulnerable, things happen, you know. So
Right.
there was a sense of an instinct to guard, but then you sort of, you're closed off when people hug you, or whatever they do. You're just sort of, yeah, you sort of, you know, you're not as good at it, and some people are better.
Mhm.
But I think in a big way, like, this is what most people going through benzos go through, because this is what my clients tell me. Like, even trying to cuddle with their husband or their wife on the couch or something, they just feel disconnected.
Mhm.
They struck, the fear is all consuming. And I say, if you can just try to feel the love, it's
Mhm.
there. It's there.
Mhm.
It's under all that fear, all that baggage, and let it, you know, foster it. It can really turn the tides in your favor.
Mhm.
I've had clients that fell in love or rediscovered their love for their spouses or their children, or their, you know, and I've watched it just transform them in, like,
Mhm.
in a way that you, it reminds you of why it's not a shock. How many great lit books are written about this? How many great films are about this? You know, and you
Mhm.
go, oh, this is kind of real. This is actually a real thing. This is what they've been poking and pointing towards, you know.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. Because as destructive as it is, the benzos are, if we could look at it, it's kind of oxymoron, but look at it as a gift
Right.
versus as a curse. And not that I'm ever promoting it, but because we've gone through it, now let's make something beautiful out of it. All roses have their thorns in it. So, yes, we had the thorns with it, but what gift am I going to get out of this? Because now you learn to love. Now you learn to receive love. Now you learn all of those things. It's the most humbling experience I've ever gone through. And a
Absolutely.
part of me would kind of love to erase the last 2 years of my life, but I'm choosing not to. I'm
Right.
embracing on the good that I have gotten out of this. I have met the most amazing people that I would never have met. I have compassion for people, you know, that I would have never had before. So
Right.
all things are always, they don't say they turn out for the good, and absolutely they do. But now is, how can I help people not to get on these things? Because
Right.
more and more of them are prescribed on a daily basis. And I'm like, we have got to stop the systems because, I have a girlfriend that, she actually watched my story and she didn't respond to it. And then I realized she is on a benzo herself. And you
Mm.
had mentioned that earlier. And I know it triggered that because she said,
Yeah.
Lorraine, I would love to be where you're at, but I can't do that. And so I said, you know what? I love you no matter what. I'm not, you can't guide your friends based on I'm a benzo freak person and I'm not.
Right.
And she said she felt that love. And I think that's something that will radiate out of us, is that light and that goodness from
Right.
this.
Right. Be an alchemist. I'm so fascinated with alchemy. You know,
Yeah.
transmute suffering into gold. That's the
Yes.
message here. Transmute suffering into gold. And I think people think I almost sound like some kind of hippie or something saying that, but I'm like, you don't have to just survive this. You don't have to
Mm-hmm.
come out of this some maimed, broken person that's just grateful to be alive. Like, they got blown up in the war, but they survived, and technically they're home, and they get a little bit of a stipend to live off of, and I guess I'm thankful. It's like, no, you can, like you said, I came through it with so much transformation.
Mm-hmm.
It matured me years, 20, 30 years. I felt like it matured me into the future.
Mm-hmm.
The way I took care of myself, my knowledge base, love, all of it. It forced me to look at 100 things I never looked. I wasn't, I would say never looked at, but I wasn't actualizing. So
Mm-hmm.
there was a ton of growth, but you can't realize what's happening during this process, that you don't realize that you're almost like a caterpillar in the cathalis stage. I think they call it the cathalis, right?
Right.
Crystallis, where they break down and then they come out of it a butterfly. Like,
Right.
that's where you are right now. You're breaking down, and so
Mm-hmm.
you're afraid to come out of it a butterfly. You're afraid that you won't come out of it at all, and then you're
Mm-hmm.
almost gripping on to, like, being the caterpillar still. It's like,
Mm-hmm.
let go of the caterpillar, uh, trust the process, focus on what you can do to heal. And
Mm-hmm.
actually, that's what I'm all about. Put together a program, a
Yeah.
smart, intelligent program, and work that. That's how great things happen. It's how
Mm-hmm.
all great things happen. No matter where you want to be in your life, you want to lose weight, you want to come off blood pressure meds, you want to open your own company, you want to be a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Like this is the path to that, right?
Yeah. And be very forgiving to yourself through that process.
Mhm.
You have that program. And and our bodies are extremely forgiving. If you think about it, look at all the years that we put the benzos in there and how
Right.
forgiving and how our bodies adapted to that and adjusted to it and healed during that time, because that's not an easy fate for our bodies.
Right. Right.
And I look at that, I was like, wow, so that kind of gives me kind of grace, because there's times I do get ticked off at my brain because I'm like,
Mhm.
come on, let's get the show on the road.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh my goodness, for what I made you go through, I'm compassionate with you on it.
Yeah.
And then my brain likes me back, and then we're a good team.
Yeah. You gotta sync up. The time is it's the toughest part sometimes for a lot of us. It's just the waiting to heal. But I say don't wait. Just get busy living. Get busy doing.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much work. If you're really honest, there's so
Mm-hmm.
much work to be done. It's like you're waiting, you're waiting for the season to come and you're going to drive yourself crazy. Just there's 3 other seasons before winter gets here, so just work those seasons,
Mm-hmm.
like a farmer, like work, you
Mm-hmm.
know, till those crops, and the next summer will come, and then you'll plant those new crops, and then they'll grow, and then you'll harvest them, and then before you know it, winter will be here, and you'll be on the other side. And but I think if you do it right, when winter comes, when that day comes, or maybe a better analogy would be like spring, um, you're the work never ends.
Mm-hmm.
Now you're just in a new lifestyle. That's why I say beating benzos requires us to adopt a new lifestyle. That was one of
Yes.
the first things I came to. I came to that during my taper, about midway in my journey. I was saying it to myself, like, this requires a lifestyle change. I had to change my diet and my sleep practices. I barely slept anyway, but I mean, I had to actually work towards trying to sleep. You
Mm-hmm.
took so many things for granted, what you ate, what you did, when you did it. And now everything had to have a new meaning to it. When I
Mm-hmm.
took that pill, I never even thought about taking that pill before.
Mm-hmm.
It was sort of autopilot, and now I'm on this schedule, and I'm weighing it, and I'm measuring it, and everything is calculated, and everything was like, even something like working in the garden for me, which I'd love to do, became a mindfulness practice of
Mm-hmm.
grounding myself to look at it and use my senses to be here now. I was like, I never did that before. So even something
Mm-hmm.
like that, I kept and I took with me to bring more presence into the things that I did. There's so much there. So I think if people can just get busy with the mission, it'll make the time go by quick, because a year blows by. It rushes by, and it
Yeah.
will pass by.
Yeah. I think what you just shared is so key, because you are in that withdrawal place and you are pretty broken, and some people are bedbound. So, how to transition through that. Like you said, you have to kind of think of something new and something different. But that's where I'm sure you have that in your program. Invite that passion within you. What is it, something you've always wanted to do and you never had that time to do? Or what is it that, how do you want your life to look? And
Right.
start playing with that, and I think you have included, like, is it a craft? I think it's so good to have, like, gardening, hands on
Right.
something, whatever that is, if it's paint, if it's music,
Right.
something because you can get in a rut in a flash. and
Right.
and you see that there's plenty of Facebook pages for benzo people, and they're all negative except Life After Benzos. I
Yeah.
was on like 3 of them, and I hopped off because it
Yeah.
was it was absolutely the darkest place to go.
Yeah.
And I, when people would tell me 15 years, it freaked me out, David, because I'm like,
Mm.
am I broken for the rest of my life? I'm
Mm-hmm.
I'm, I'm 65. That's the end of my world. I might as
Right.
well just
Right.
die and get out of here.
Right.
And so I literally hopped off. I was like, this is not feeding my soul. And
Yes.
so I appreciate having the page that you have on Facebook, and I'm excited about your mighty
Oh,
network
cool.
that you're getting together too.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Well, you saw half the group wanted to talk about symptoms, but they wanted to do it in a very respectful way, which I thought was great. Hey, look, we're setting a new standard here. We're setting a new model here, the way they did it. But still, people were writing me and going, I don't care how nice they say it. I don't want to see symptoms, Dave. I just want to hang out and be amongst people, and I want to see pictures of success and what's everybody doing today. Oh, I'm putting in those extra steps. I'm working in the garden. I'm painting a little painting. I'm doing some yoga. You know, I've cut down 5 milligrams this last, you know, how many months. Like that's what they want. That
Mhm.
in success and hope and positivity, it breeds more of that, and we definitely need that. But then other people said, you know, well, I have questions, and I want to, you know, and I trust you, and I trust your environment, so I feel this is the best place to ask these questions. So I was like, dang, they got a really good point. You know, I can't deny that. It's a good point. It's like
Right.
I
Mhm.
emotionally relate to what you're saying here. How do I do both? And
Mhm.
with Facebook, it doesn't allow you to do that. You get one stream. So with the
Mhm.
Mighty Networks in the Benzo Recovery School that I'll launch has multiple discussion forums. So I have
Mhm.
one titled Symptom Talk. You go there, you can talk about symptoms. I'll answer your questions directly. We can, you know, we're still going to keep it positive and everything. There
Mhm.
will be no just, you know, losing it and being negative or any of that. But if you don't want to see it, if somebody doesn't want to see it, symptom talk, they don't have to. And then we'll have other forums for things like mindfulness. We'll have forums for the different modules I'll be releasing. So I'll be releasing 4 modules, and then we can, you know, we'll break it down into 4 different discussion forums for that as well. My program's also broken down to 4 stages of recovery, with each stage bridging to the next stage. So there's a logical, you're going to start here, you'll be going through this. This is what it feels like. This is your challenges. This is what you need to do to get to this stage. And then when you get to that stage, same thing. You know, here's the key
Mhm.
characteristics, here's the key challenges, here's what the mission is now. And that's going to bridge us into stage 3. And then stage 4 is coming home, you know. And I broke it down further and I looked at it through the lens of 3 tiers of benzo recovery, 3 tiers of self development through this. And I called them benzo boxers because I've always just had those boxing gloves on everything, you know. And it makes sense because it's such a fight or flight situation, and I want
Mhm.
everyone to fight back. But there's different ways to fight. Fight doesn't mean muscle. It doesn't mean strength and violence. And it could be love. It could be compassion. It could be acceptance. It
Mhm.
could be motivation. It could be friendship. It could be a lot of things, you know. And
Mhm.
so stages 1 and 2 of the recovery program fit the beginner boxer. The beginner benzo boxer, you know, it's like a regular boxer. They're kind of coming to, what is this thing I'm now a part of. It's sort of waking up in there and starting to figure out and starting to learn. And then stage 3 is sort of like the intermediate level boxer. You know, now this person's been fighting, they've got some
Mhm.
wins under their belt, they know how to train. They're not ready for a championship fight yet, you know, but they're progressing. And then stage 4 being that final stage, which is where you would be, in my opinion. You would be someone in stage 4, and would be a tier 3 boxer, a champion benzo boxer. And so I thought that would be cool to identify where we are too, so that there is a sort of, I want to say a hierarchy, but there's a sort of order there that we can acknowledge and say, oh, she's a champion boxer. You know, look at where she's at, because then they listen a little more. I want to know what, or if you're at that level, say you're at stage 4, I want to talk to other stage 4 people now, right? Because
Mhm.
now stage 1, 2, and 3 don't really, I don't care about that anymore. I'm here at stage 4. I want to talk to people like you. What are you doing? What works? You know, we want to communicate and exchange knowledge. And if I'm in
Mhm.
stage 1 or stage 2, then I want to talk to people in my, or maybe sometimes look at the people that are progressed further as evidence of like, well, damn, Lorraine looks like she's got it together. And look at what she's saying, you know, so it just gives hope. And, you know,
Mhm.
so all of that came out of what you just said, you know, that trying to keep it positive and then meet everybody's, make everybody happy, I think. So I've thought about
Mhm.
it for at least a few years, and that just seemed to come together, you know.
Mhm. I'm so glad you're doing that, you know, because I was just thinking, you know, as you're saying that, it's, man, I wish I would have had that program because you do feel pretty naked when you first start this, you know,
Yeah.
because you're at such a loss, you know,
Mm-hmm.
because even my daughter, she would do tons of homework. I mean, she would be up all night, and she even gathered her siblings and said, these are things we're going to tell mom. These are things we're not telling mom,
Mm-hmm.
you know, because don't tell her the worst, always be positive with her, and when I had my broken down moments, they were the ones that would pick me up. So, for you to have that is so key, because not everybody has those places to go. And at this point, we don't trust doctors. So where are we going to go? And then we do go to, the WebMD, and then we go, that fear thing can eat you up. It's just like, I have all of these symptoms. You can have the same symptom as a person that has cancer. I mean, they're all in the same boat. And then you go like, oh gosh, now I have cancer, and all these things just plague you, and you're stuck with it. So for people, I mean, I don't even know if you know how huge this is to have your program, because I'm just tickled for you.
Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. I hope so. I mean, it's been coming. The first person was me, that I went through it. And I thought, when I first came back and put out a video, I mean, other than telling people you will survive, you will beat this, you will heal, I wanted to say, well, how's my story unique? Or as they say in research, where's the gap in the literature? Where's the gap in the research? And when I came back and I saw the gap was no one's telling anybody that they're going to get better, really.
Right.
And B, they're not telling them how. And it's almost this notion that there is no how. We're just victims weathering a storm. It's like, that's true to a certain degree. You can't deny that. Absolutely. But once you understand the nature of the beast, what the limbic system is, what it's trying to do, what chemistry is affected, the manifestations, the multiple heads of benzo withdrawal, from insomnia to all kinds of things, health anxiety, like you kind of alluded to, and then how those things can manifest and go on to become their own little major problems, matter of fact. So these multi-headed beasts, once you understand all that, you start to get the aha moment, a bit of like, oh, okay, now I know the trick that's being played against me, and now I can start to do some different things. And that's why when you first started talking about your story and you were getting to the part of why things were successful for you, the thing I jumped on as a coach again was, you basically saying, I changed my mind. I chose a different thing for myself. That's what people need. That's something I hammer every day with my coaching, is something on that level, to stop and realize that the limbic system in all its fright is going to hijack your response style, your mode of thinking. And I highlight this, like, think about having a panic attack in a car. You get so panicked, you almost forget how to drive. Right? Like, you ever get so panicked and so in it that you forget almost just how to talk. You start breaking down words, and your movement becomes weird, and like you really start to lose it. I mean, you panic. That's what a panic is. You're in like a tailspin. You're not at your best. And I think we have to realize that, so we know that we're not seeing things clearly, because that's very important. But of course, when you're panicking, you think you're seeing things very clearly, but you're not. It's like, and once you get that aha moment and say, the limbic system's lying to me. He's throwing up all these chemical message that's making me terrified. It's making me think something's wrong. That's making me want to react in certain ways. And part of the recovery process is learning how to alter that a bit, or navigate that, right? And then you can make some lasting changes. The risk is, if you don't learn how to navigate it and you just succumb, then you're like in a little dingy vessel in a great hurricane over the ocean. You're just at the wind. You have no direction, no way to sail that damn thing. You know what I mean? You're sort of at the mercy of the weather at that point. And that's what I see people usually when they come to me and they're in bad shape. That's where they are. They're in that little dinghy laying on the floor, and the wind's beating them up, and they just go, I don't know if I can keep holding on. And you ask them what they're doing, and it's like everything they're doing, unfortunately, is sort of allowing the weather to have its way and not learning how to change. So I love that that is a message, and I hope people are hearing that with your story.
Because at that point, it was a balloon, but now it becomes a monster, and you're so stuck in it. And it's almost like you have to just shake in your own self, how am I going to get it out? And it's very quick, like you said, I just got to get David, David has to be my fix, right. Or whoever that is. And, right. So I love that you have that, in place, because it is, it is a challenge, but life is a challenge, and we got here, we're going to get out of it, whatever that looks like. So even I did, after I sat down, because I would say, what would I do differently that now that I have gone through what I have? And I came up with 5 questions. Do you mind if I share them?
That's interesting, because that was one of the things I was going to ask you. Yeah, no, that's great.
Yes. So and I'm not sure what I'm going to call it yet, but I created my website. It's called empoweredhealthnow.org, because I'm always about empowering. So anyway, the first question is, how did I get here? How did I get here? And I'm going to explore that, is because, at the time when you go to the doctor, you're all up the creek with what's going on. I had this panic attack. I need assistance right now. If we could just, again, just pause for a little bit and just put that focus on, how did I get here? What created the situation? And whether it requires journaling, talking to a therapist, somehow we got to figure out, how did we get here so that we can get out of it? Because if I came in this room, I know I can get back out. I got to figure out what that looks like. The second question is, who do I want to partner with to my wholeness? And dissect that. Who do I feel comfortable with to, is it a doctor? Is it a therapist? Is it someone like you? I really encourage people, when you're in this situation, don't let just anybody be your therapist. Right. Because I had a therapist through my psychiatrist. She's just a young girl. And I said, have you ever dealt with benzos? She said, no. And I said, no, thanks. She had no clue. She was so book oriented. It was ridiculous. I just wasted my money, and I'm over it, because I wanted someone that has sweated through this stuff, has toiled through this stuff, has put the same shoes on that I did. Those are the people that are going to assist you. So who do you want that person to be? Because we don't always align with certain individuals. So you got to figure out who that person is. And we can break that down by simply, expressing what you want that person to be like. And then the third question is your lifestyle. We're body, soul, and spirit. You got to change your diet. You got to change your exercising. So, you got to welcome all those things that we always thought we could just get by with. Because I'm not really for gyms. I love to walk. I love to run. I love to play volleyball. But, don't put me in a gym. That's just never been my cup of tea. So I had to figure out what that looks like for me. So we do that for everybody. Number 4 is channeling. So learning to express all of who you are, your emotions, your soul entities in that channeling. And then the last one is the vision. Write your vision, make it plain. So I know that's very simple, but those are my 5.
Oh, I love those. Those are great. So you're moving forward. You came out of this, and now your trajectory is give yourself some more time to heal, and then you want to approach the scene as a coach now, a benzo coach. That's your goal?
Yes.
That's great. And what's the website?
It's called empoweredhealthnow.org.
Is that already available? Is that out?
Yeah.
Oh,
yep.
Awesome. Great.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Now, do
my
you have
story's on there?
The one that you shared with me, right? Do you have a YouTube channel?
Yes.
What's that? How do they find you?
The same way. It's Empowered Health Now.
Powered Health Now.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll link it
too. I try to do everything same so that I don't have a whole bunch.
Right.
A whole bunch of different things going on.
So are you going to be releasing like weekly videos and that kind of thing as well, kind of growing your channel?
Yes. Like right now, I started a little TikTok channel, and what I'm starting to do right now is just inviting people to stop and think about, if you go to a doctor in your dire situation, prior to them putting you on a benzo, do the research, reach out, even get second, third opinions. So that's how I feel like I'm led to start right now. I know it's very basic, very generic. It's where I'm starting. I got the word when I was walking. It's just, you know what, Lorraine, step out, do a 2-minute video. So I did.
Yeah. Jennifer's grown her channel. Swantowski. She's grown her channel very well. And I know she keeps saying, oh, I don't think I'm going to do a benzo cut. I'm like, you probably will. You probably will. It's too much of a calling, but she may not. I mean, she certainly doesn't have to, but I have a lot of peers that now are in clinical psych, and they're like, what are you doing, Dave? Coaching? And they see the channel and they say, what? And now a few of them have decided to try to do their own type of thing from the lens of clinical psych. And it's I think they like a lot of us will quickly underestimate how much goes into it and how long it takes. It's like if you start a channel now, it may take 2 to 3 to 5 years to get it even remotely with enough people to make it feel worth doing. You know, I
Hmm.
mean, you will spend a lot of time putting out videos and kind of going, God, dude, time to do another video. I got 15 people subscribed or 15 views, and okay, now I got 30 views, and you're like trying to grow it. But I think if you just are selfless about it and just be pure with what you're trying to share, don't think of it like,
Hmm.
don't think of the journey from the beginning to the end like that. Realize you're on a journey. So just share your story and grow your audience and build your tribe, because people will flock to you. They'll just
Hmm.
gravitate towards you. Something about you. They just like you. They'll say, she reminds me of me, or something about her story, or I just resonate with her, and
Hmm.
they'll prefer you over me or somebody else, right? So I always think about that too. Like whatever fans or followers you build, these are your people. They're
Hmm.
following you for a reason, you know. So I think it's unique. I think there's room for everybody. And one thing I'm probably going to do in the future. This was inspired by Coach Daniel, the sleep coach. That I think I turned you on him, didn't I? Coach Daniel
Yes.
Erickson.
Hmm.
Love that
Yeah.
guy. Just shot last Thursday. Shot a sleep documentary, the part one of a sleep documentary with him. So he flew down from Oregon, and we spent the day shooting a documentary. It was a lot of fun. That's
Um,
I don't know if I'm supposed to
yeah.
be sharing that now that I think about it. He's gonna write me and be like, "Hey, what are you doing?" Well, now y'all know.
Yeah.
But he said, but he goes, I have my own coaches under my school, and I trained them. I created a training program, so they're under my. And I said, oh, it's brilliant. I said, I've kind of got a few people already that are asking me about kind of, hey, do you need a coach, or could I help you? And they're like my stage 4 boxers, my champion boxers. They, like yourself, they know everything, and they could teach the program. So I'm thinking very strongly about creating a kind of training course for a few coaches that if they wanted to use my model, then I could train them, and then maybe, so I'm just toying with that idea. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud but about it, like a power certificate or something like that, or a powers model. So if you like Dave or Coach Powers, but you go, man, he's too busy, I can't reach him, but I would love to find someone that shares that philosophy. So something to consider.
Yeah, that's definitely a healthy leadership. And
Mhm.
you would do great at that because and that's what I was going to say is we're all one. If we can look at it, we can complement each other because like everybody has their different preferences. Going back
Mhm.
to my second, who do you want to partner with? Who do you want that person to look like? So I
Right.
can say, what, David would be your fit, or Jennifer would be your fit, whatever that looks like.
Right.
You could totally have a team like that
Yeah.
and build your community that way. Because I don't like when people are divided with this,
Yeah.
because we all have an identity with this. I don't care if you're on it for a year or if you're on it for 20 years, you're going to experience withdrawals. You're going to have that ruminating. I don't care. I'm fully persuaded. It doesn't matter how long it is, and if we can help win and pick
Right.
up those that are, like, especially when they're ready. Because I think
Yeah.
I'm the one that asked you. I say, man, if people aren't ready, because there's people that they're back in the same boat, a month later, and I'm like, when are we going to change? When are we going to go on the cruise now? Because your
Right.
boat's busted.
Right. That's a good way of looking at it. Yeah. And you'll still have ups and downs and things moving forward. It's healing is a kind of meandering up and down path.
Mhm.
But what's important is, did you change? And what I hear from you is somebody that definitely seems to have changed and found a really good base for herself. And so when I hear how well you're doing, and I know you still suffer and still deal with things, um, it's not a coincidence to me. I just point
Mhm.
to you and say, listen to her, see what she's saying, hear what she's saying, see what she did. Um, there's clues there, and it's and me doing this, I work with people all around the world. I mean, literally, I'll be talking to someone from Australia tomorrow,
Mhm.
people all over the world, all ages, and all kinds of stories that you can even imagine. And I see great trends on all kinds of things. And I
Mhm.
can honestly say the people who learn to do a lot of the stuff that we're talking about here, putting a program together, learning how to change their thoughts, change their behavior, change the chemistry, separate fear from anxiety, get rumination under control, learn to push and lull, all this stuff. Hands down, I promise you, they do better. They just do better. And so
Mhm.
that's a hill I'll die on, that when,
Mhm.
because it's sort of an ideological difference in the benzo community where a lot of, people are saying you just sort of need to rest and heal. You just need to rest and heal. And I go,
Mhm.
yeah, to a point. That's there too.
Mhm.
That's part of the equation.
Right.
That's part
Right.
of the stew, but there's a couple other vegetables you're leaving out there, you
Mhm.
know. Um, yeah,
I like,
it's just not as simple as resting and waiting. But
yeah.
in a way, no, in a huge way it is, because it's like short-term relief for long-term problems versus
Mhm.
short-term agitation for long-term relief. That's the difference. So if you lay and pray and do nothing else, there's a fair chance things could get worse for you. And
Mhm.
then they'll fester and continue to get worse. And hope you outrun the benzo withdrawal before the maladaptive coping mechanisms start to swallow you.
Mhm.
That's sort of what you're against. Or you start to learn, okay, I'm going to try some new things, the diet, all this stuff. I'm going to make a lot of changes. It's going to agitate things for a little bit. Even changing your diet will agitate things, especially with the limbic
Absolutely.
system, because the limbic system
Absolutely.
wants predictability. It
Mhm.
wants routine. So it wants you
Mhm.
to eat the same things you always have eaten and do the same things you've always done. But it doesn't, but so it doesn't welcome new things very well. Even changing your diet, even doing some morning yoga. It's like the limbic system's like, I don't like this. What are you doing? And so there's a little bit of an agitation that has to happen. And I think it's worth it. Agitate initially, but be honest where you are. If you just drop 20 milligrams, like I did, of Valium, or if you came off 2 milligrams of cold turkey Klonopin or something, whatever your story is, if you got devastated, you got the rug pulled out from underneath you, it's not the time to go do marathons and walk and do all of this, right? And so I think sometimes people miss that part and they think,
Mhm.
Coach Powers is telling me, and does he understand? It's like, oh, absolutely. I've never told anyone to start by any of that stuff. You got to be
Mhm.
honest with where you are, though.
Mhm.
But I said, everybody can law.
Mhm.
Everybody can law. They can relax, they can use distractions, and they can at least remove maladaptive coping. We can all begin there. You don't have to start
Mhm.
with exposure therapy and exercise and anything else that may be too triggering or difficult, or but we can at least stop harming ourselves. We can start there. Remove the toxic
Mhm.
people, remove the bad foods, start to change the lifestyle. And it takes time. Like, lifestyle
Mhm.
changes are hard. They're really hard. I mean, look at the rates of obesity, blood pressure, all of these things in this country. Very treatable. Type 2 diabetes, very treatable. But who's treating them? We want the
Mhm.
meds. We want a quick fix.
Mhm.
It's hard to change your diet and your whole lifestyle, but that's what we need. And so,
Mhm.
going back to what we were saying earlier, that's the alchemy of the situation, is that if you do it right, you'll come out of it better. You'll come out of it better. It's 100% a possible road for you.
Mhm. If you need it tattooed on your arm so you see it on a daily basis, go do it.
Right.
Because you've got to have that in front of your face, because that fear, something about that fear from that benzo, it just magnifies and you get so stuck in it. And and you're not happy, like you said, like that change of diet, it's not easy. And so you just like throw in the towel. But no,
Right.
I'm going to look at this. I'm going to remind this. I'm getting better out of this.
Right.
You know, and celebrate every single step. So let's
Yeah.
circle back around. I want to really invite you to start imagining, what if people would love to learn from you? I would love to learn how some of your coaching, because there's times I'm like, I don't even know how to help this person.
Yeah.
Because I put it on TikTok. I actually had this sweet young girl. She said, I was put on a benzo when I was 13 years old. I'm 23 now. I want to get off. I need help. My heart goes out to a person like that. But I'm just like, you just go to David right now.
Right. Right.
So what I wanted to say is, imagine some of us wanting to learn from you how to do some of this coaching.
Yeah. Well, yeah, at first I thought it was a great idea, but then this other voice went, is that like narcissistic? Is that, am I being, you know what I mean? You start to think, am I jumping ahead of myself here? But I thought, no, I think this is a good model. And I would love to have people that just didn't take pieces of it, but here's the whole damn curriculum,
Mm-hmm.
and to have people, but so it made total sense that to me, the people that I would most champion were the people that I saw, that I coached, that I saw go through it, make real change. I watched them make changes in their life. I've seen them grow over a period of time, and I can vouch for them and say, this person is different. Like this person put in the work, got the results, and they know everything that I could tell you, which would make my job easier and we could reach
Mm.
more people, So
Right.
yeah, I think it's got to I kind of think it's got to happen on some level to maybe just begin with a handful of people, grow the school, and then those people could even venture off and become their own separate entities if they want,
Mm-hmm.
because you can't own the information. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
make the information. There was
Yeah.
things that I did that I do think were kind of unique, like the five senses limbic training. I didn't see that anywhere, but at the
Mm-hmm.
base level, it's a lot of classical conditioning, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and then other than that, it's really what I think I did was I'm like a guy that should be on Jeopardy. I just studied a lot of things and I put it all together. You know what I mean? In the sense of it, it's a
Yeah.
perfect coming of elements too, because I went through it and was had that background in clinical psych and was applying
Mm-hmm.
those things. And to me, that made all the difference. I don't think I'd be here without that. I
Right.
just don't think I would have. I'm not saying I wouldn't have survived benzos and maybe even thrived afterwards. I'm sure something in me, but I wouldn't have had the program I had, and it wouldn't have. I just know that in my heart, that in my
Mm-hmm.
mind, that wouldn't have been that way. So to me, that was the difference between me and some of the coaches and other people coming up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So I want to ask you a few more things here. What would be one piece of advice you would tell yourself going back to the beginning of this? Like if you could go back and tell yourself something to make you feel better, to watch out for, or not to do, or to do, what would something like that be? Can you give me some ideas?
Absolutely. Because I was so unhappy and I was just so serious. I would tell myself, lighten up, girl. It's not
Right,
that bad. If I could
right,
do this over, is because there's times, I never smiled for weeks on end. Holy cow, just lighten up. It's not that bad, you know. If nothing else, smile. Smile will
right,
shift everything. So
right,
I wish I
right,
would have smiled more through it.
right,
Yeah.
right. What would you tell yourself to give you hope if you could go back to at the beginning to your old self, knowing what you know now? What one piece of advice would you give that might give you hope?
Oh, would give me hope. Connect with nature even quicker than I did,
Right,
because I think energy, there's healthy energy there. And every time when I felt in my darkest moments, like I am going to die or I want to die, and then I was afraid I wouldn't die, is
mm,
at that moment is, okay, what would I do to shift that to that hope place? Is be a little bit more quicker to find what shifted for me. And that was nature. That was my thing, whatever that is for
right,
every individual, is to chase after that, run after it with all you've got.
right, great,
Because there is hope. When there's breath,
absolutely,
there's life, there's hope.
right. Yeah, I think with myself, which you know, it's not the best thing, but I I wanted to, what the reason I'm here is I came back because I wanted to tell everybody, hey, it's gonna be okay. Don't worry, don't give up, don't succumb to fear. It's gonna be okay.
Mm-hmm.
Right? That's what I would want to say to myself. But as I say that, myself would have said, "Shut up! You don't. How do you know? Because I'm on the other side of it, you jerk. Show me evidence." you
But
know.
that's good though, because it's like I said earlier, my husband would tell me a million times, you're going to be okay. I needed to
Right,
hear that.
right, right. I think yeah, and I like kind of what you said, like find that thing and get to it sooner. And I think that resonates with me too. If I would go back and talk to my older self going through, or my younger self going through that, I would say something like, figure it out and don't mess around. Don't play games. It's like boxing. Like, this is a serious opponent you have here. Train hard,
Mm-hmm.
focus, dedicate, be committed, take it serious.
Mm-hmm.
And I think in a way, in a big way, going through Benzo's sort of was like, it matured my work ethic. Because I think being an artist, I was very creative. I was always sort of intelligent, and I was always very, very creative. And so you start to get a little bit relaxed because you
Mm-hmm.
coast on your natural talents a little bit. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean? And so this thing finds what your weaknesses are and exploits the hell out of them. And even your strengths suddenly aren't, maybe don't even matter anymore. And you go, oh wow, that's not even on the table. You know.
Mm-hmm.
So I think if I went back, that first year was a lot of coming to Jesus. It was a lot of waking up and kind of trying to get, that first 2 years, I think I was just, because we're creatures of the path of least resistance. So it's like, I'll give you just enough, and then I wish I just knew. No, Dave, this is what it takes.
Mm-hmm.
Get serious. Here's the program. Go. You're
Yeah.
not going to give. You're not going to give 10% and think you're going to get 50% out of it. You need to
Mm-hmm.
put in 80%, 90%, 200%. So I think that's a good message. Um, and yeah. So what else I was going to ask you? What's one thing you would avoid? Do you think? Going back and talking to your same analogy, going back and talking to yourself, what would you tell you to avoid?
And negativity.
Right. Like in the forums in general or people or
Yes, yes. Even, if you go on Facebook, you can feel the vibration of negativity. Just hop out of that thing like like a leopard, be
right.
speedy about it, because I would read and think, oh, I'm going to be okay. I can read that, and I'm going to be
Mhm.
fine. No, it takes you down. It
Yeah,
literally takes you down.
it
And
does.
yeah, it's
It's
just not worth it.
it comes up every time I have someone that reached out to me in a wave. And they go, "Oh, Dave, I don't know what happened. I was doing good, and 2 months I was doing great, and now I'm in a wave." And then I go, "Have you been on the forums?" Yeah.
Yeah.
How much? Yeah, a lot. But and I know that the forums didn't start it, but it damn sure doesn't help stop it either. It Once your
Hmm.
hyperarousal for whatever reason is lit, and sometimes it
Hmm.
doesn't matter. Like you said, it could be
Yeah.
a smell, a light, a sound, the
Hmm.
damn weather, and suddenly you wake up in hyperarousal and you're just off to the races for a day or two or three or whatever the situation, maybe a couple of weeks sometimes. Your nervous system
Hmm.
is trying to work it out. But when you
Hmm.
engage in the fear and the toxicity, it's just going to keep everything elevated. It sort of prevents it from coming down.
Hmm. Yeah.
I was just did a new video that'll be coming out soon about keeping the window open. When people have windows, I say try to create a situation where that we'll welcome that window. Try to crack it back open. And what we tend to
Hmm.
do is we have a window and then it shuts, and it's almost like we go, damn it, and we smack our hands on it. We get angry, we get emotional, and it sort of translates to almost adding or reinforcing the lock on the window,
Hmm.
right? Because it just happens more times than I can tell you, and probably you've even experienced it. We can't celebrate the window. I love the windows. When someone comes to
Yeah.
me, they're so upset. Dave, I just had 3 days of beautiful. I was almost 100% better. And now look at this crap. I'm back in it. And I said, did you ever have 3 days before? No. Last 2 years of your journey, you even had 3 days that you felt 100% normal. That's your brain telling you it can do it. That's a
Hmm.
celebratory moment. You should celebrate that.
Hmm.
If you had heart damage or kidney damage or liver damage, whatever, and you don't know, those things don't bounce back. Those don't.
Hmm.
But if they did, if suddenly your heart started to do what you go, thank God it can still get there. It can
Right.
still do that. And I said, that's huge. You should be
Hmm.
celebrating that. But we get so disgruntled by the fact that the window closed that we can't allow ourselves to celebrate that victory. And that's the kind of thing I'm talking about. If people listen to this, that's what I mean. Change your mind.
Hmm.
That part you have to work toward. That's a skill set you develop to say,
Hmm.
oh, my instinct was to go, damn it. But no, I need to stop and reframe this. This is good. Yeah, I'm
Mm-hmm.
bummed out the window closed. But
Mm-hmm.
usually another window pops up within 60 days of the first window. So
Yeah.
that's a number one. So,
Right.
but open the window. You
Mm-hmm.
know what I mean?
I like
Open
that.
it,
Yeah.
crack it open. How do you
Mm-hmm.
do that? You give your limbic system's like an obedient dog. You give him a treat. You say,
Mm-hmm.
"Thank you for opening that window. I know you're
Mm-hmm.
scared, and you shut it again because you're guarding and you're scared, and this is what you do, and you're trying to make me survive. You're not trying to
Mm-hmm.
kill me. You're trying to
Mm-hmm.
help me survive. You're wrong. You don't
Mm-hmm.
realize that yet. You're too dumb to realize it, unfortunately. The way the limbic system works, it has no intellect. It's very reactive. Um, but I can teach you by giving you a
Mm-hmm.
treat and saying, that was good. Do that again.
Mm-hmm.
Train it like you would train a dog not to poop in the house,
Yeah.
right? It's very
Absolutely.
simple. It's classical
Yeah.
conditioning. Train that damn limbic system to work for you, not against you.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, it's an uphill battle with benzos, but it's an uphill battle with anyway. But especially an uphill battle with benzos. But it's doable if you keep working toward it. So I think that's a very powerful message.
Yeah. I love that. I love that you said keep the window open because we have a tendency to worship the wave,
Right. Right.
and we have to stop worshiping that because
Yeah.
we get so stuck with that, because you have that window. You, for example, you did the airplane ride. It went great. You did it again and it was hard. Your chest hurt the entire time. Never mind. I'm never going to do an airplane ride again.
Right.
You know what? Who are you giving power to right there?
It's right.
Who are you giving authority to? So we're not going to worship that. So I'm going to welcome that airplane ride again, because I did it once before. I bet I'm even going to have a better time this time.
Yeah.
And imagine, I think for me, I have to imagine a lot of things. Like I know I've got an event coming up tomorrow. I imagine how I'm going to have that event look. And it doesn't always pan out the way I want. I've had my crying moments on the way home and it's like, that was crap. But you just can't stop,
Right.
And so
Yeah.
I just say, what, I'm not going to worship. I'm not going to give that any place. I
Yeah.
don't, one thing I used to do, David, for a while is I would talk real bad to my body or my brain. I was like, you're stupid. Can't you just get your crap together? I stopped that because, my body it would respond to that
Yeah.
and almost, like I thought, well, would I talk like that to my daughter? No. So I'm going to talk to my brain like I would to my most beloved.
That's right. Yeah. Hold yourself sacred.
Yeah.
Right. We don't,
Yeah.
that's step one of self love. If you can succeed in realizing your divine potential, uh, you become enlightened. Right. I think
Right.
that's what true enlightenment is waking up and realizing, like, oh, okay, I'm not, I'm not this little insignificant thing that I need to be tough with anymore.
Mhm.
That you
Right.
realize, you know, and part of that too is realizing that we're all one as well.
Mhm.
It's one thing to say it and write it and put it on a bumper sticker in your car, but to actually see the consciousness in someone else's eyes and think like, oh, we all share this, then it's
Mhm.
hard to make enemies out of everybody.
Mhm.
They become your extensions of you. Then you become
Right.
an extension of something bigger than you, something more. And I hesitate to talk in spiritual terms because I know there's a lot of people watching that are probably atheists or agnostic. But my impression of that is more open minded. I say,
Mhm.
look, I'm talking about something sacred. And
Mhm.
I mean, watching your child be born, kissing your bride or husband or groom on your wedding night or wedding day, watching a rainbow after a storm. Like there's so many, surviving cancer. Like there's so many moments in your life. If you look at them, that feeling, that awe, that deep awe that rattles you to your core. Those things that there's only a handful of moments like that sometimes in a life that you have
Mhm.
a very small number of things like that.
Mhm.
That's sacred. So
Mhm.
I'm not necessarily talking about you have to become, if you're not, and if you are religious or you are spiritual, even better. Then you
Right.
got that kind of working for you.
Mhm.
That's not to say, I've known a lot of scientists and atheists and agnostics that were very spiritual, and some of them just didn't realize it.
Right.
You
I was
know,
going to say, I think we're all spiritual beings. I have seen love ooze out of an atheist more than I have out of someone that's religious.
yeah, yep,
I'd rather be there, to be honest with you.
yeah, yeah.
Religious is
Well,
so ego driven. It just is.
it
It just
can
doesn't
hurt
work.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah, it can be very ego driven, and it's very there's a machine to it, and
Hmm.
the machine can help you get to the other side, and sometimes it can prevent you from
Hmm.
getting across that river, you know. But
Right.
the goal should be some kind of self transformation and some kind of communion, you know, some kind of connection to something. And if that connection is just love and it's just being kind and feeling good and doing good things, and that, but again, there's something sacred, I say, inside there. And what I mean is when you love and you're engaging in that, life suddenly has a purpose and a meaning, right? So it's like, which came first, chicken or the egg, religion or the spirit, right? This thing came first, whatever that is. I think man kind of maybe made some mistakes with the what there are 8,000 different religions out right now.
Right.
You know, which
Right.
one's wrong? They're all wrong but ours. That's the attitude. Everyone else is wrong but mine.
I,
And of course everyone else thinks yours is wrong too, you know.
right.
So it's a conundrum.
Yeah,
but
absolutely.
But
Yeah.
if you can cling to the what's, you know, what seems to be profound in it, maybe the profundity of it all. Even Einstein said, "My religion is, you know, to be basically stand wrapped in awe of the mysterious unknown, and the
Hmm.
cosmos and the universe." Great, that I like that.
Hmm.
I like that a lot. You know, that makes a lot of sense. They didn't say is,
Absolutely.
you know, throw gay people from rooftops and whoa, what? Where did this come from? No, man, yeah, man's narcissism. I think you nailed it there on some of it, right?
Right. Yeah.
So, so speaking of this, before we go, I wanted to ask you, it's so fascinating that you grew up Amish. What can you say something about it? Like what did you know you were going to leave? How did your family? I'm so fascinated by that because I just have so many questions. You know, were you deeply spiritual? Did you carry any of that spirit today?
Yes. The only thing I think that's different from the Amish is they, and they have good traits. I am extremely grateful for everything I learned from, hardworking, industrious, just wise as can be. I
Mm,
just think they forgot to turn their clocks and they stayed stuck in their places, because when they first got organized, they actually just branched off of the Catholic Church.
right,
So they have a lot of similarities to the Catholics. And they just stayed stuck with like horse and buggy, no electric, and just were extremely inconvenient in many, many ways. So yeah, many of us when we leave our people, you do have family that forsakes you and walks away from you. I was very fortunate. My mom and dad never did that to us. They embraced us, and we were always allowed to sit at their table. And of course, they're both gone now, but it is, I always tell people I've come a long way, if you think about it, and now because of some of the things that I'm doing, I'm very engaged with a lot of Amish people. I can talk their language, I can communicate with them. So I look at it as a gift for me to be, to start out that way, because now I have an identity. I can
yeah,
resonate with them. I can sit at their table and I have a lot of fun with them. So I always knew I wanted to, be more than that. It just didn't make any sense for what we were doing. We would always have to hire a taxi to take us somewhere. Why don't I just have my own car?
right,
So,
right, right. Yeah,
so
and it seems like there was a lot of fear that if we change things, we'll lose this truth, this stability that we knew, which is rampant in Buddhism as well.
yes,
That's why so many of the monks are monks, for one,
right.
and they live in the mountains or in the monastery,
You know,
and
your
they
biggest fear is what somebody else will think. I know because I've got family members that are still there. It's because they're afraid, what will other people think if I leave my tribe?
right, or just evolve it. I mean, the fear to evolve it is scary because you think you're going to lose something.
Yeah.
And the monks did the same thing. They shunned the world, all
Hmm.
possessions, their ego, everything, and they found a way to be happy. But
Hmm.
the later, you know, there's been many different incarnations of Buddha because Buddha just means someone who's awakened. So
Hmm.
they're not like a deity or entity or something. But eventually, they started to realize, wow, you know, we're so busy shunning the world and all material possessions. The guy with the nice sports car and the house and all of that, he's trapped. And eventually, a Buddha realized, well, we're not that different than him. You know, the guy that can't run to the mountains, who stays in the valley and indulges in all earthly pleasures, to him the earthly pleasures have just as much of they're just as powerful as the person that runs to the mountains and escapes it. So one
Mhm.
person can't be around it and the other one can't stop. It's almost like a drug addict, you know. So one
Right.
person says, I don't want no alcohol in this house, and the other one says, if I have alcohol in the house, I'll just fall apart.
Hmm.
But it's like, can you walk the middle path, right? It's that sort of Taoist approach. Could you walk the middle path and
Hmm.
and still have be in this world but not be corrupted by the things around you, I guess.
Right.
So that's the toughest
Yeah.
practice, right? So maybe that's
Hmm.
where I hope a lot of religions can get there, because I grew up Catholic, and some elements of Catholic are still kind of stuck in the mud, so to speak, and for good reason. Again, they're afraid that they're going to lose tradition and they'll lose a foot and something that they've come to realize is very sacred and special.
Hmm.
But there might be something deeper out there too. So
Hmm.
good luck trying to convince anybody of that. Right.
We never, we just don't know how powerful we are.
Mm.
We really don't. And what you might find interesting is, so the Amish are very protected. So they have their own little space, safe places, because they struggle with, depression, anxiety, just like everybody else does. And so they have their little, like mental places that they send their people. Well, what's interesting is many of them are being put on a benzodiazepine as well. So now they're coming to Lorene with, how do I get off? Because,
Wow.
yeah, because they're kind of quiet and secretive about it, but they're struggling, and they don't want that. So
That's
that's a
fascinating.
that's a whole field of ministry right there, and healing
Yeah.
that we're going to be able to offer. And
Right. It's a very
it's
specific
pretty,
demographic.
yes, yeah.
And with your background, would you highlight that your background so that they can understand that you can relate to them?
Yeah, well, the word gets around, so they say, "I understand you can talk German," and I was like, "Yes," and then
Mhm.
they'll just flow, because I can just express myself better in that language, and it's
Mhm.
fun, it really
Mhm.
is. But my heart goes out to them, because when
Yeah.
I learned about that, I was like, "Yes, we can absolutely get you out of that dark place," you
That's
know.
awesome. That's great. Look at you. That's a cool path. I love hearing you guys seeing how all these different paths that lead out to, to things like that that I would never even known that existed, but now you can create a pathway out there to help them come back from that. A
Absolutely.
demographic that would otherwise been very disconnected and
Hmm.
unaware and then
Right.
victimized,
Right.
right?
And think about it,
Victimized.
they don't have access to the internet like you and I do. They can't go watch a YouTube. So
Right.
they feel like they're at the end of the rope. Their
Yeah.
life is over with, you know.
Yeah. In some ways,
Yeah,
it would be beneficial because they wouldn't have all the doom and gloom things planted in their minds,
for sure.
you
For
know,
sure.
but then
Yeah.
they're sort of lost without information, and then they can be brainwashed or manipulated from big pharma side of things or psychiatry side.
Hmm. Yeah.
Wow. Well, that's interesting. You'll have to come back on sometime if you would, and we could talk for hours, I'm sure. Maybe we can do this again and dive into some other things, You seem like you seem like there's a lot to you. Like there's a lot I'm sure we can unravel here.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot to you too. So, and I
Well,
actually
thank you.
dreamed about this. I said one day I will have an interview with David. So,
There you go. Isn't that cool? I
yeah,
love I love when things come to life like that, come to
it does.
fruition.
Yeah.
That's
Right.
that's kind of sacred right there.
It
Um,
is.
so
So thank
what
you for having me.
thank you. I'm very happy that you came on. We definitely got to get you back on in the near future. One more time, tell everybody how they can reach you and find what you're offering.
Yeah, absolutely. My website is empoweredhealthnow.org, and everything's on there. And my Facebook link is on there, as well as my YouTube channel.
That's
It's
awesome.
still very new. I'm just beginning.
Hey,
So
yeah. Oh, awesome. Well, I'd love to see how it's going to unfold, and I'm sure we'll be doing this again soon.
yes.
All
And
right.
like I said, thank you.
Thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you for listening. One final thought: you're healing. You will heal. And when you're on the other side, tell them I told you so.
Yes, yes.
Right.